Hello everyone and welcome back. Great to see you all again. Today we're going to be looking at Imperial Japan's weakened economic and military state, right? So previously we actually had a brief look at the economic situation in Japan and also the catastrophic military situation, right? But we're going to have a look at a bit more detail this time. We're going to be looking at the lifeline of Japan, which was its merchant shipping, and how decimated this was by July 1945. And this again, poses the question, was there an alternative for the United States leadership under President Truman and his hierarchy of using the atomic bombs in order to gain Japan's surrender? Okay? So in other words, if the US had perhaps waited a little bit longer past July, would Japan have imploded economically because there was no supplies coming in due to the fact that its merchant shipping was on the bottom of the Pacific floor? Alright guys, I'll see you soon, and once again this will be through a screencast which we will be examining a official US document that has been released through the US National Archives. Take care and see you soon. So we're going to be looking at this document in front of us. It's the effects of strategic bombing on Imperial Japan's war economy. And it's taken from the United States Strategic Bombing Survey. A little bit of background to this. This survey was set up under Roosevelt and later Truman to establish how effective was the strategic bombing campaign against Japan's military and economic infrastructure. We'll have a brief look at the maritime devastation that Imperial Japan had suffered by July 1945, and why maritime merchant shipping was so important to the survival of Japan and also its ability to wage a war effectively against the United States. So we'll have a look at this, and I'll just highlight some key aspects here that I managed to find here. Right, so let's just scroll into the introduction. We'll get passed through the index here, and we'll just go to the introductory section here, where it contains the most important information that I want to highlight with you. Okay. So, firstly, if you look at a document in front of you now, it says the conclusions, economic effects of the strategic bombing of Japan. Let's read through this. Then, if we read through the first paragraph there, it says, by July 1945, Japan's economic system had been shattered. Now, obviously, this was a month before the bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August, right? So, by July, its economic system had been obliterated. It had been shattered. Production of civilian goods was below the level of subsistence. Munition output had been curtailed to less than half the wartime peak, a level that could not support sustained military operations against opposing forces, right? The economic basis of Japan's resistance had been destroyed. Now, this is very important to highlight here, because it does pose the question, was there another alternative to using atomic bombs in order to bring Imperial Japan to surrender, because its economy had been destroyed by that time, and its ability to fuel and maintain its war industry and ability. Reading on further, then, the economic decay resulted from the sea-air blockade of the Japanese home islands and direct bombing attacks on industrial and urban area targets. So this is where it all came from, the sea blockade, from submarine warfare, surface ships, from the air attacks had literally destroyed Imperial Japan's ability to survive at a level that could sustain it to fight a continuous war with the United States. Reading on further then, third paragraph, the continuation of the blockade was to deny Japan vital raw materials on the mainland and in the South Pacific area. Japan's dependence on these sources was crucial in the case of oil, bauxite, iron ore, coking coal, salt, and to a lesser degree or lesser extent, foodstuffs. The point I want to highlight here, it mentions heavy merchant ship losses began to cut raw material imports as early as 1943. So this is very important to highlight here. The lifeline of Imperial Japan was its merchant shipping. All the materials and minerals that it needed to support its war effort was extracted from primarily Southeast Asia, Malaysia, rubber, Indonesia, oil, Indochina, commodities, supplies. Now, with this lifeline being cut off, Imperial Japan, mainland, Honshu, Kyushu, Hokkaido, was basically bare of any kind of resources to maintain it on a level to compete with the United States. Merchant shipping was its lifeline. And once this had been cut by 1943, as this document illustrates here, it really did dramatically impact Imperial Japan's ability to continue this war realistically. And by July 1945, the economy was pretty much non-existent at that time in Imperial Japan. Let's move on a little bit further then here. As the blockade was tightened by submarines, the mining program, and air power, imports were almost completely stopped. So once again, any imports from Southeast Asia or even mainland China that it so desperately needed in terms of natural raw materials, just wasn't there any longer. It could not sustain, it could not even fund its war economy because it did not have the means to anymore due to the decimation of its merchant shipping at the time. Merchant shipping obviously was the transport that it used to get those raw materials into the home islands. But with this being decimated pretty much at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, it didn't have any more means to bring these raw materials to really fund its war economy, to provide it with the resources in order to continue this war for any lengthy period. So this is an interesting illustration here of the weakened state Imperial Japan found itself in, especially by July 1945. Economically, it was shattered and its war economy was on the ground. Its industrial ability, capability to continue the war in producing war material was not there any longer. So perhaps if the United States had waited until the end of the year as an alternative to using the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it could have prevented the horrific destruction of those two cities and the suffering of those people in those cities for generations to come at the time. So this document is quite revealing, and we'll have a look at this document in a little bit more detail later, and we'll have a look at other aspects besides the merchant shipping. All right, guys, thank you very much for having a look at this, and see you later, and take care.